Welcome to Biz Dev Live. I am so excited to bring you the CEO of Amplified Growth, KiKi, the Italian. We are going to get into it today. We're going to talk about the long game. We're going to talk about all the ways that you can get sugar honey iced tea done, be the person that you want to be, and move forward in the world with power. We're going to get into it right after the Biz Dev theme.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
KiKi the Italian has been a social media leader and online community engagement cultivator for over 15 years. As the host for Association Chat, an online community and media platform for the association industry, KiKi's posts, podcasts, and social media reaches over 72,000 individuals monthly. And podcast guests have included Seth Godin, Nir Eyal, Dory Clark, and many others. In addition to her work with Association Chat, KiKi serves as senior consultant for Tecker International, and she is the CEO of Amplified Growth. I want you to welcome very loudly from wherever you're tuning in, whether you're live or watching this later, the amazing, the exceptional KiKi the Italian.
Yay! Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live. I love that intro. It's so good.
Oh, thank you so much. So, all right, so we're going to get into this. All right, so tell us what you're doing right now, how you serve people. Obviously, you're touching a lot of people regularly. You're somebody that, saying this before we jumped on, I was definitely looking out into the world, and I was looking at the Joe Rogans and the, even sort of silly enough, the Ryan Kiagis of the world that are these like YouTube megastars. But folks like yourself really gave me more of the groundwork for how I'm going to, do my thing and speak and connect with people. And you do such an amazing job of it. And I'm really excited to bring you to my viewers and have this content out in the world, because I know it's going to help so many people. You're doing amazing things. Talk to us about how you're currently providing value to folks, and then we'll get into the story of why and how this all happened.
Well, Cameron, thank you so much. You're doing amazing things. I see everything that you're doing, and I get inspired too. I am helping folks in a number of ways. One of the things we're going to talk about today is about my pushing back on this idea of niching down, which has been very popular in recent years. And I know we're going to go into that. But I had to preface what I'm about to say with that, so that it makes sense when I tell you that one of the focuses that I have, one of the foci that I have, is on Association Chat, obviously, which is my online community that's been going for over 11 years in one form or another. And that's just, a community that's online, that's focused on the association industry and anyone who has anything to do with the association industry. The other way that I help people is by teaching about how to build community and rebuild trust for teams. And I do that with Tecker International, which is an international consultancy that's focused primarily in the association and nonprofit space. And then the other thing that I have that's been consistent since 2012 is Amplified Growth. And that's kind of where everything else fits. That's like all of my social media consulting. I do a lot of work with how to communicate better and cultivate communities and build communities And that kind of comes from my background with not just building association chat, but in my previous life working for associations.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Wow, Siri's talking to me. I don't know. But Kathy sees. Kathy Horner, I see you chiming in over here from Centerville. Yeah, hey Kathy. I've been working on cultivating community through chapter development and building components for different organizations for pretty much my whole career. So when it comes to like building community online, that's sort of second nature for me. And so that's how I help people. I help people reach other people.
That's amazing. All right, so let's get into this, because you're into so many different things. You're managing it. So I mean, I think there's two big things that I definitely want to stick a pin into, because I think I want to really come back to is how do you manage it all, first of all, but also, in addition to managing it all, you make such an impact. I was telling you before we jumped on, like, you're a big inspiration to me, and you do a lot of things well, and that can't be said for everybody. So I think a lot of people are waiting for those secrets for success. But this gets into a bigger, deeper question. When you talk about all the things that you're doing, how are you driven? Why are you so crazy doing all of these different things? Where does this all come from? Tell us, how little KiKi became amazing, fabulous, all over the place, KiKi.
Well, I all over the place is about right. I remember actually, when I was a kid, I could tell you one of like several stories, but I'll tell you this story because I think that it reflects very accurately where I am today. And I used to watch Johnny Carson and Sally Jesse Raphael and all of these different talk show hosts all the time. And, while I was dancing on my back porch in the middle of nowhere, imagining that like Michael Jackson's tour bus was going to break down and he's going to be tromping through the woods and see me dancing and I would be discovered. More often than not, after I finished doing the dancing outside, I would go inside and I'd pretend like I was being interviewed on one of these shows. And always, because I was a nerdy kid that was dancing in the middle of nowhere to Michael Jackson, always I was like explaining, I was having this moment like how we're talking right now, Cameron, where I was, it was really hard growing up. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. And then, I would name some kid that was giving me a hard time at school or something. And that was my moment to get revenge, as I'm explaining to like Johnny Carson, how so-and-so was really crappy to me.
That's awesome.
And getting my revenge. But I think from an early age, like I had this idea about wanting to communicate to other people. And so I naturally gravitated towards different types of communication. So like when zines became a thing, I wrote a zine. When the internet was huge. So it was like, oh my gosh, let me jump on and, get involved in forums and like the Depeche Mode online forum. I was like involved in that. And so really all of that's to say is even if it were smoke signals, even if technology were nothing today, I would be out learning how to do different colors of smoke so that I could communicate to the tribe over like what was going on, because that's just who I am and how I connect with the world. And so I think little KiKi would be looking forward to today and would say, one, like, why weren't you ever discovered and on stage with Michael Jackson? Too late. Sorry, little KiKi. And two, I just wasn't that good of a dancer. And two, awesome. Like all of this technology allows you to connect with so many people. Like what else are you going to do? So I think little KiKi would hold my feet to the fire saying, you got to keep going, got to keep going.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm hitting buttons back here, so just never mind me, the guy behind the curtain. So, anyways, this idea of the long game and that early look into the inside of little KiKi saying, I'm going to get revenge. I love that.
I'm
Revenge
friends
is
with all those people I would get revenge on by I'm Facebook friends with them, and I don't want to call out anybody because they're great people. But
I love that. Revenge is a best served call, right? Like I got you.
It can be a motivator. Down the road. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
All right. So talk to me, because I know that probably our first interaction started around Eventprof. So as you were talking about, like, if it was smoke signals, if whatever, literally, like if you go back to 2009, 2010, in terms of what we have right now available to us, like with this little device and everything, it feels like, Twitter was smoke signals compared to, what we're doing now, even on Twitter, right? I mean, like the idea of like images and videos and all that stuff, like we put text, like it was just 140.
Yeah, 140 characters or less, Cameron. You're so right.
And we were working it. We were killing it.
We were totally killing it. I want to go back. It was awesome. Yeah. No, it was great.
Event camp, all this kind of stuff. We were doing amazing things in that realm. I want to kind of, just because I know that's kind of where our community stems from, and I'm looking forward to folks that are watching this chiming in and asking questions, things they want to know, if they want to go back and ask more questions about little KiKi. I love that. But talk to me about what you've sort of seen, because I think event camps has really, really come into play, and the whole Eventprof community has really come into play this year, right? I don't know about you, but I was like,
yes,
like flashback. Like we were talking about all the things that we're doing right now in this moment.
Yes. Okay. Can we, like, anyone who is listening to this right now, if you don't care about anything else that I have said the entire rest of the year, I want you to please understand this thing. There was a thing called event camp, and there were people where 11 years ago, it might be more than that, I'm not sure, but 11 years ago, I know for sure, we're solving the problems and testing how to do hybrid events using technology and do them really, really well in the coolest way imaginable. They were writing white papers and solving these questions, solving these problems over 10 years ago. And I was there. I was a part of it, and I was witnessing it. And I know the people you need to talk to. Absolutely. So like Cameron, like we were part of this community, and it's been, I think, you tell me, Cameron, what you think. Like, it has been such a frustration for me to know who people should talk to and who just started like venturing into this territory in the past 5 months, versus somebody who is truly a pioneer and has tested the theories and knows all the people and all the players and the things to watch out for. That's been frustrating for me, because as more and more people have been playing the pundit game and jumping in, it's hard to know who the real knowledgeable people are. Not to say that you can't jump in and be innovative at any point, right? That's cool too. But it's been hard when I know who to tell people to talk to, and I haven't really felt like I've had the right chance or opportunity to do that. And one could argue that I could, put a whole long tome out there, but it's just like, I would just say, like, here's a handful of people you need to have a conversation with. And what happens after that is whatever. But that's what I need to do, is like talk to these 5 people for sure before you do anything. And then good luck on what you're doing. But you will save yourself time and trouble and turmoil if you talk to these 5 people.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I look at folks like Glenn Thayer that we were in the midst of, and he's a great host, right, for programs. And I know you've sort of gone that route with some of your media stuff. So you look at, folks that, were providing that example way back when. I know Glenn has some like amazing for Star Wars fans and Mandalorian fans and Star Wars Rebels fans, which I know there's a lot of folks out there. He's going to be Thrawn for a fan series video.
Yeah.
So like he's
It's
doing
so cool. Glenn's cool anyway, but I mean, like, even if you needed just a master of ceremonies in normal times, he's awesome. But he's also figured out and has on the biggest stages you can name, he has figured out how to navigate the virtual and the in-person, and has been doing that for a long time. So Glenn Thayer, excellent example. A person who knows so much about experiential and what the experience is, and designing these things, these events together. Our good friend Tahira Endy,
Yes.
who she put together the hybrid event that happened in Vancouver, and is where I got to meet a lot of the Vancouver events rock stars that are out there. And all of us came to that event and were able to experience, or if we weren't right there, we were part of these pods that would watch and that kind of thing. And so, I mean, there are people who have not only have they been exploring this territory, but they have been actively working in this territory for years. So they can answer questions while they're doing the thing that they're hired to do. They can answer questions for you just to get your event further along. And I mean, Cameron, like, it is exciting on the one hand. I don't know about you, but I like, on one side, I'm really super excited that people have to pay attention to this now. On the other side, I'm super annoyed. Like, the whole year I've been like, see, we've been trying to tell you like for so long, for over 10 years, but people are paying attention to it now, and I won't say that it's 100% frustration, because obviously it feels really good to be one of those people that has answers, right, for people. And, we've been looking into that for a long, long time. But it is kind of frustrating, just because, I feel like there's a sense of, well, nobody knows the answers to how this will work. And I'm like, well, some people do. Some people actually do. They've actually done it. So
yeah. So this goes back to what we wanted to really get into today, which is this long game. And sometimes you do things because this is something that's going to help you in the future. And then sometimes you do things because it's experimental and you don't know what's going to happen with it. Maybe you got a feeling. I know that for me, I definitely had a sense of the future when we were getting involved with the event camp events, but I didn't know, if me paying this money or doing this travel was going to work out and do something good for me. I think they were amazing events. I still go back to those events, and this is the hard thing. And I think this is where like the frustration comes in with some of the challenges and the mental strain that you're kind of talking about is, over the last 10 years, have you attended that many events that create this sort of feeling that we had from attending these event camp events, And
no, I think there was a sense from at that time, because of the technology that was available, people, I know that those of us in that group that would go to the event camps and talk about it and be part of the planning for them, we saw the technology that was available and we wanted to apply it. And then we wanted to figure out not just how to let the technology guide it, but we wanted to say, what's possible? And so when we went to these events, people who listen, they might think of it as just any kind of event that they they typically go to, a typical conference. It was not like that. There were tests with the way that the way that they would sit. There were tests in the way that people took information in. There were tests with format. There were tests with the way that we interacted with virtual audiences while we were attending live. There were tests with gamification and the different tools that you could use. There were tests in the way that we would present and how many different types of tools, monitors, and technology that we would use too. And so there were all of these different tests. We were truly, I think the challenge was always to truly experiment with how we could do things differently and do them really well. And I give this example of the technology, but then there was another event camp we attended where the focus was to go almost like totally without technology. It was like, okay, turn off all of your devices and be fully present and 100% here. And that was totally like immersive. You have to like not hide or numb out behind your devices. And that was another experience. But the focus was really about how can we make these as truly remarkable, exceptional experiences for the people, the participants of an event. And so, I think that when we're talking about the long game, the thing that was exciting about that was that we were pushing ourselves. We were looking for how can we do this the best way possible in different ways, and then also how can we break it? Where are the areas that are weak? Where are the areas that could be improved upon? And I can honestly say that like every single person that I met, not only am I still in contact, like all of us became really tight because it's like one of those things where, there are people I don't talk to directly for a long time, but I'll just throw out a name, Jill Foster. I don't talk to her a ton, but if she showed up on my doorstep, she'd be sitting down, she could stay overnight. I mean, we became so connected through this experience.
Adrian Seeger is that guy for me. There's a few of them. Ray Hansen, who's regularly in my meetings, different people. But yeah, absolutely. Those connections have been made. I want to get us towards some things that are really focused in on you because I
could talk on event camp.
Yeah. No, so I want to talk about. I want to ask this big question because I think it comes out of this because really that conversation of that freedom or that permission or understanding that if you get into this event, we're going to break a few eggs. It might be a little bit messy. And we're still going to have fun and we're still going to get some stuff done. I think that is a big part of the entrepreneur journey. I know you mentioned the lean startup, and when you talk about lean startup, you're talking about the minimum viable product, right? Like just get it out there, get it started. So
yeah.
I have this big question that, this is the big setup, right? All of these different aspects of it. The big question is here. How did you build a following and a list of 72,000 people, right? I think that's something that, a lot of people want to know. They're out here, they're trying to build their business. They're trying to promote themselves, right? They want to make sure that their brand is growing. They want to make sure their sales are coming together. So how did you do this? I know that there's the organizational side, the branding side, the wherewithal to go through the trials and tribulations. Talk to us about that.
So, I have to admit something right out, and that is that in the very beginning, even though I was responsible for building chapters and building communities all over the world for the organizations that I worked for, and I had these different experiences with through working in journalism and figuring out how to reach people using the different tools that were available to me, with something like association chat, which you reference, it reaches over 72,000 people. I couldn't believe it when I actually sat down and added up all the different channels to see what that reach was. And the reason why is because even though I would pay attention to one or the other, I think metrics are important to track. I wasn't actually sitting down and sort of looking at the cumulative impact that it had, mostly because even though I do have sponsors and advertisers, it's not something, Association Chat is now its own business, but it wasn't something where I was spending 100% of my time and thinking, okay, I need to go out and get more advertising. So I wasn't looking, I didn't need to do that. At one point, I wanted to spend more time on it. And so I thought, okay, let me look at the numbers a little bit more. I pulled it together and I thought, my gosh, how has this grown so much? And a friend of mine at the time, when I was looking at my numbers, she says, of course, like, why haven't you been to KiKi? Oh my God. And the way that it's happened has been, it does, I can retroactively go back and explain why it worked the way that it did. But I would be lying if I said from the beginning, I thought, okay, I need to grow my mailing list by, X amount within the next 3 months. I didn't do that. What I can tell you is that all along the way, I kept trying to figure out what's the best way to keep people informed along the way, and how can I connect them with each other? And this is really something that I think that a lot of groups, if I could give advice to people, anyone listening about how to build your list and how to actually build community, I would say focus less on yourself, and even on your content, on pushing your content out, as much as, while that's important, think about how you're connecting people to each other. Because if somebody just is dipping in to listen to your content, I might think that I'm brilliant, but I'm not going to be brilliant 100% of the time. And what's more is that I think that people can learn more from and get more value from meeting other people who are like them, who can answer some of their questions. And if I can be responsible in some small way for connecting those people so that they're able to build a relationship, they're able to hire or connect with people who can help them in their businesses, their organizations, or they get some sort of resource that makes them stronger as a result. Those connections that are built there have high value. Anyone can go on YouTube and can follow along passively. But in order to actually build, I think, something that has staying power and loyalty, not only do you have to show up regularly and show up consistently, but you also have to put an extra effort into making sure that people can connect with each other so that that sense of community builds. And that's something that's lacking in a lot of different offerings that are out there, that I think, that's where a lot of different brands fall short. And I'll also say, I'll add on to that I talk a lot about trust and how to build trust. That's another piece of it, is that a lot of times we get so focused on the transactional that we're not focused on actually what's in it for the person that's participating. And I think if we're thinking about people as leads and even as loyal members down the road, that may be what's in it for us, but what's in it for them has to be that they got something that they thought was of value, a relationship, that they're going to somehow be worse off for not being a part of that group. And so that is how I've continued to build. Now, tactically, I would say trying different channels and going out and posting on those different channels has been the way that I've been able to cultivate and grow a list over time. But I think that even if that list were 10 people, the most important part would be the part where they're getting value out of it. Because if I dialed up 72,000 people and each one by one, and just had a very, tenuous, not very strong kind of relationship to them, it wouldn't matter. But if I have 10 people who 100% believe in what I'm doing and see the value in what they're participating in, and I can call on them, then I'm going to get somewhere. I'm going to get there's going to be something that happens as a result of it. And so, the number is impressive, but I think the most impressive thing is what's growing as a result of it.
So one of the things that has really struck me, and I hear this from you right now, I've heard it from other folks that have also had success on the different platforms, whether you're talking about Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you go. One of the couple of things right now when we talk about platforms, in terms of platforms, a couple of the places that I'm focused on are Facebook and LinkedIn. And I say that full well knowing from Gary Vee and just seeing the results for people out in the world, the two places that I really need to be are LinkedIn and TikTok. Now, TikTok is not my comfort zone, and I'm working. I got a virtual assistant. We're creating content. We're actually breaking down some of these videos. So hopefully we'll see some of these videos broken down and shared on TikTok soon. So when we're dropping nuggets and information, we're going to capture that and we'll bring it over to TikTok so that we can grow that following.
Yeah.
But going back to your point, like Facebook is where, like, that's where my family's connected, my friends connected, and I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with the business side from the business page and also sharing some of the business stuff and playing with the test even stories right now. Like, oh, all right, if I post this photo, like almost 200 people will, heart and da versus if I share something like this. And it's surprising. So I encourage people to try things out just like you're talking about, because it's that kind of thing where you get that learning where you're saying, oh, wow, this clicks and this doesn't. I really want to focus on what you're talking about in terms of engagement and really interacting and creating that brand loyalty or loyalty to your brand, right? Through how you're providing value. So what are some of the ways that what are some of the stories that you have of folks? Because I feel like it's a two-way street, right? I for sure get a lot more value from the people that are following me and participating and commenting than I'm glad when they say that they're getting a lot of value from what I'm doing, but I'm getting so much more, and I'm really happy that there's people watching, and there's the view hours are up, and the number of clicks and all that stuff. It's wonderful, but I am just learning so much every day, and with that next meeting, that next one-on-one, I'm able to deliver that much more value to them. So I'm kind of asking the question here. Twofold question. One, are you sort of seeing that same thing? And then if you are, great, but also how are you learning and what value are you getting from the people that are engaging and participating with you?
Oh my gosh. So much there. I'm going to take a step back and tell you something that has sort of haunted me and guides me in a lot of the decisions that I make. And that is, have you heard of William Blake? He was an author and he was an artist and all of this stuff.
So I was going to say the name rings a bell. I'm like, I'm thinking about, we were just talking about like folks like Adrian and I put Sam up there and Tahira, and I'm like, is he in our network? But yes, I know the author.
I'm looking. I recently moved to New Jersey from the DC area. And so I was looking over here to see if I had the book, William Blake's book. He wrote.
So I got to say this because, I'm a New Yorker, so I give New Jersey a hard time. New Jersey, your stock just went up, baby. Your stock just went up.
Did you hear that, New Jersey? Did you hear that? So yeah, William Blake, he's been gone a long time, but the thing that I thought was interesting about this character is that he was maybe a little bit crazy. He wrote a lot. He was prolific, and during his time, people knew that as an artist and a writer and a thinker, that there was something, important to pay attention to, which is kind of rare when you think about artists. That doesn't always happen while they're alive, that they are recognized for the genius that they offer. But he had some acolytes and people who really followed him. And so he was, always writing and always creating. And he thought that he had this sort of inspiration that came directly to him from some omniscient force, God, And one day, one of the people who, sort of looked up to him, and I guess we'd call him a mentee now, but it was sort of a follower back then, show up, and they see William Blake throwing, notebook after notebook, I'm sure back then maybe it was papyrus, I have no idea, throwing it into a fire. They're like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing, William Blake?" And anyway, they're just moaning about all of the lost great work. And he explains that if he was so connected to the work, it would be because there was this idea that a better idea would never come to him, that he didn't have faith in the muse. He didn't have faith in a higher power to continuously deliver creativity and new ideas to him. And so, in essence, if he didn't sacrifice those books, if he didn't give some of that away, then he wouldn't be believing that there would be something better that would be on the way. And that story
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to talk about how important it is, because I'm connecting to that story, because there's this idea, like when you're creative, and I think this happens to a lot of young people, they get latched on to whatever that first idea is, and they don't want to let it go. And then the moment somebody says that idea isn't good, or even more importantly, right, somebody's going to steal my idea. So you keep it a secret because you're so afraid that you're going to let that thing out. It's so little faith in yourself to continue to be. I love it. Continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, it's good. I mean, that's the whole point. I'm glad that you felt inspired to interrupt, because that's how I felt too, is I heard that story and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so true. We get so caught up in holding on to the thing that we have that what does that mean if we get hung up on an idea or an answer or a solution or a blog or a podcast or, a technology or whatever it is, we can't get our ego so wrapped up in this is my one great thing that we don't believe that there are more great things that are going to come. We have to build that muscle. We have to build that creativity muscle. And so when I heard that story about this person who lived a long time before you or I ever did, Cameron, I thought, that I need to remember that, and I need to hold on to it, and I need to develop that muscle where I'm not afraid to try new things. I'm not married to something that if it doesn't work, I'm so afraid of letting it go. And I also, my ego and my identity does not have to be tied to this one idea. I can move beyond it, And so I think that has been one of the things that is sort of the undercurrent throughout everything that I do. And, it's like, for a long time, people were telling me I need to niche down because I have these different pockets of things that I focus on. And, it's like, depending on when you've met me, you might have thought about me as being all social media and the social media person. I create social media campaigns. You might think of me as being the community builder. I'm all about how do you build online communities. You might think of me, if you met me at a certain place at a certain time, you might think of me as a makeup artist, because I actually, for a while, and that's not an area that I focus on.
Your makeup today is exquisite, by the way.
Thank you. But I was a makeup artist for the National Press Club for many years, even while I was working for associations, because it was a side hustle that I was able to do. But I love that area of focus, and how it all ended up coming together. I think of these things as like tributaries to a river that flows into the ocean, right? The ocean's huge, it's massive, that's connected. We're all on water, right? And ultimately, and all of these tributaries, while they may seem like everything in the space that they're in, They all flow in to the same waterways, right? So I have many tributaries and they all flow into the same thing, but they feed into this bigger, more powerful thing that is, I think, more important because it allows you to take all of these different areas of interest and expertise and allows these things to mix and mingle in a creative way so that what comes up, what those solutions are, they're unique. They don't look like everything else. And sometimes they're crazy and it doesn't make sense. And sometimes they're really, really right. And I'll give you a very practical example of how this played out for me this year. So I started out, just like everyone else, thinking that 2020 is, it's going to be full of Great Gatsby parties and who knows what else. I think, what's 2020 all about? And then COVID hits. And suddenly, 25% of my income comes from traveling to speak and train, and do keynotes and things like that. And it was looking good, right? The year was set up. That 25% was already spoken for. It was probably going to be a greater percentage in 2020. COVID hits, and a lot of that switched to virtual. A lot of that got postponed. A lot of that got canceled. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to be getting these additional jobs. And if I do get the keynotes that are coming in, they're not going to pay at the same rate as what the ones were where I'd be traveling to some place and spending time and getting up in front of an audience. And so, so I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for this component of how I make my money? But I didn't hardly have time to even think about it or brainstorm about it because I was contacted by someone who knew me as a makeup artist, right? And she contacts me. She works she's a writer for NBC. And she was working on an article where it was about how to look better on Zoom. And I thought, oh yeah, you can interview me for NBC. And I had a lot of really great advice because, even though I'm a little overexposed today because I have my lights on a little too bright, I was able to say, okay, here's what you need to think about. Here's what you need to know about 3-point lighting. Here's what you need to know about what to wear and what not to wear. Here's what you need to know about your background. And so I was able to give this advice. And, I started hearing from different organizations about and this is after this was published, could I teach their people, whether it was their leadership so that they presented better online, or could I teach their members so that they would be able to do better? By the way, the healthcare industry, I had a huge number of people from the healthcare industry reaching out because they were going on to these interviews and they were also speaking with patients through telehealth way more than ever before. And my particular brand of expertise, I ask you, where would you be able to find someone, Cameron, who is a makeup artist, who has a weekly live streamed podcast that can talk to you about the technology, who's worked with a production crew and can tell you about how to avoid shine and how to cut the red in your face?
Right.
Who can tell you about how to build community through technology by building trust and how you're able to speak through the camera? And so all of these things suddenly made all the sense in the world in how I was able to reach people. And so that more than made up for what I was already planning for my year to be. And years ago, I had some advice from some well-meaning people who said, KiKi, you need to focus on just moving your business to a speaking business because you can make so much more there if you have a few good talks and you focus on your training, If I would have listened to them, I would have been having a much rougher year this year, because I wouldn't have had a diversified way of the way that I bring in revenue. And, it's important to me for a number of reasons, not just financial reasons, but it's important to me to have a few different things that I'm focused on where I can grow. It's not always fun for branding purposes. It's not easy. When we do the bio, it's like, well, I do this and I do this and I do this. But there's a way that you can streamline it. And that too will allow you to not just expand the audience that you have, but when the unexpected happens, when things like this happen, you're able to the P word pivot faster. You're able to come up with new solutions that you may not have available to you always if you kept things so narrow and so tight that you didn't expand in different areas, the one trick pony. We all talk about not wanting to be the jack of all trades, but we don't want to be the one trick pony either, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So talk to us about, because you have all these things going on and you were talking about the niche down. So talk to us about, you got all these things going on. How do you still get things done? Because I think the idea of niching down means that you can focus on the one thing, right? You're talking about, it's not that these people were not in your corner. They want to help you. They want you to focus so that you can do that one thing really well. I think for a lot of people, that might be really good advice because they're trying to do a bunch of different things and they're doing them all horribly.
Scattered.
Right?
All horribly. Yeah.
We've seen the people that, they're trying to do all this business thing, but they haven't gotten their website set up. They're trying to, send stuff out in their professional business, but their business name at gmail.com. And they do this and they do that. And when they get into a networking meeting, they go into this laundry list of things that they do. And then when you ask, oh, okay, that's great. But who are you looking for right now? Who's like an ideal customer for your business? They're like, oh, everyone, anyone that has skin.
I know.
Anyone that has, right. So it's not like, I really want to focus this because I think people can hear this the wrong way. What KiKi is saying is not that you should be in every single pot doing every single thing. Although, right, so that's sort of the thing, right? So I'll set it up that way.
Although, yes, you don't want to be in every single thing. Although, like the metaphor of the tributaries that lead into the river, right? Although if you can look at channels and be able to spread your message on different channels and reach more people in the way that they can get the most value, then you're going to be able to grow your audience and you're going to be able to create more opportunity for yourself. And so what I find is that we fall into this trap of either or thinking, and that's troublesome for critical thinking in general, but it's also troublesome for the way that we guide our lives. It's really too easy to do. I do it. It's very natural for us to do it. There's a reason why. It's because when we have to make decisions, we don't always have forever to ponder and think and contemplate over all of the different variations and variables, right? We have to make a decision. So we make shortcuts, and it's much easier for us to say something like, well, it's either this way or it's this. I'm either going to niche down or I'm going to do everything. No, what I would focus on is you might want to identify who you are and what your strengths are, who you are and what you like to spend your time doing. And when you think about where your strengths are and what you like to spend your time doing, and that inevitably every single entrepreneur and every single business person and every single person who needs to pay their bills needs to think about what's someone going to pay you to do that hopefully overlaps with that thing that you're good at and that thing that you like to do, then you find that sweet spot. But sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we only know that little teeny part that we've had experience in. Yeah. So maybe you started out, you got out of college and you said, you know what, I got this job that's available. They're going to pay me to be in marketing and I'm going to learn how to market. And my specialty is the healthcare industry or something like that. I ended up getting so involved in the association industry, and it's happenstance. It's somebody offered me a job. It had to do with marketing and membership, and I became everything associations, right? But at some point you have to figure out, what is it that I can maybe explore or venture into or bring some of my special skills into that might enrich this area, or how can I grow that area?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
I want to bring a little bit of context to this because I'm a hospitality guy, right? So I've
Mhm.
had a company for the last 9 years, waiters, bartenders, kitchen assistants, chefs. What the hell am I doing with some YouTube show on business development, talking to CEOs and entrepreneurs? And one of the things that's sort of like a self revelation, right? Is this idea that, more of my chefs and executive waiters and bartenders and folks, right? First of all, I'm a bartender CEO. I started out, my first jobs when I was young, I was working for my father, went over to work with mailboxes, et cetera, which is now the UPS store. And the next job after that was a bartender. So I am a bartender CEO, and I actually use those skills in my job with Toth Event Staffing and interview bartenders. And I know what they're talking about because I've been there. I've had my head down. I don't need to look at the drink recipe. You either know it or you don't. You can't fool me over the phone. You can't fool me in person. I know if you bring that level to it. And I love people in the world right now, but you can look at even politicians. I'm a fan of ABC, and whether you're a fan or not, she is somebody that is vibrant, my fellow bartender in the world. So you can be from another skill set or industry and bring that over and bring the added value to it. But the thing that's sort of like the big deal, like eyes wide open kind of thing is, well, in a Zoom world, my hospitality industry folks need to understand what I'm doing right now. They need to know how to broadcast. They need to know how to do these things. Now, I've been on social media since, Event Prof days and Twitter, and I didn't know where it was going. And at one point I thought I'll be like, social guru, social media guru number, 8,000,002. And, and I went a different way. And now I'm like regretting it. I should have been social media guru 8,000,002, maybe do the hospitality thing and keep both of the things going, because how big would my YouTube channel, right now?
I don't know. Cameron, okay. I think you are exactly where you need to be right now. And I think I am so excited that you have this show. I think it's awesome. I think that you're like,
well, let me tell you one. Let me tell you one thing.
I would say that you should have
I just
always
wanted to
had
bring-
this,
I just want to bring up one point. Joe Rogan started his YouTube show in 2009. He is now the biggest thing on the planet in terms of podcasts.
Don't you think though? I mean, this is like,
I'm not saying I would have been Joe Rogan. I'm just saying that if I had any percentage of success, and I saw from because I had a YouTube channel during that time, and what I was putting on it was some of the dance videos. So my channel, if you dig deep enough,
your son. Wait, right?
So I had a son at 19, right? But I have a college and career preparatory program, which part of the reason I've been involved with that for the last 24 years is I've been driven to make sure young people who are young, dumb, and full of, aren't making some of the same mistakes that I'm, made in terms of, because, and a lot of people sort of get upset when I mention mistake and son at the same time. But let's talk real is real. If I would have done it the way that I have 4 children with my wife, I would have much preferred to have a child that was born into a home that was loving and guided. My 4 children at home, they're getting all of my attention, all my love. I don't know how I would do it without my wife, having that. And I came from a single parent home. Both my mother and father were split up. So, I was born from my mother, who had me at 19. She was born from her mother, who had her at 19, and I had a child at 19. So I'm looking at the world as a big success, because my child that I had at 19, which I don't have the best relationship with because of the situation, he has not had a child that I know of, knock on wood, yet, because he's not got everything figured out. He doesn't, have his things, his situation, still living with family and all that kind of stuff. But that kind of thing is such a big deal to me. And I don't look back at it as a regret, but I do look at it as a learning thing. Like, the same way if I would have saved 50% of all of the money I earned from even going back as far as 2009. I'd love to have go back to, my first jobs, which I'm doing with my 14-year-old daughter. She does an internship with me over the summer. I'm like, you get to keep 50% of the money, and then 50%, it's not mine, 50% is going into your savings account because I didn't learn how to save money, but you're going to learn how to save. How in 20 years from now, KiKi, how much is my daughter going to thank me if she got any bit of percentage of that idea of saving that money for capital growth and investment? I mean, she's going to be worlds ahead of where I was at 34.
That conversation that you're having with her, though, this whole time, it's that thing where you look at what are the things that you learn the most from. Is it from your successes or your failures? And I think,
yes,
and I think that I have failed a lot. I've failed in a lot of different ways, and we would need a lot longer than an hour to go into all the ways.
It goes back to the event prof conversation and not being afraid of failure. The failures are what I can teach people so much more from all the things that I've done wrong than any of my successes. Right.
Oh, it's so true. And I think that if we're able to share then and apply our lessons, like what you're talking about that you're doing with your daughter, one thing that I think is really important, my husband and I do with our daughter, is that we talk about finances. We talk about in front of her so that it's not like some sort of like weird hidden thing that only one person's talking or dealing with. He's not off by himself in a cave somewhere figuring out where we are with our finances. And, right now we're going through a move and we're trying to figure out, okay, without knowing necessarily what the future holds, based off of what we see, based off of our assumptions, based off of what we know that he's going to bring in, and that making a guess, we're making very conservative steps into our next house, purchasing a house, because we don't know what's going to happen with the economy next. And we want her to understand those steps, because even though we could get and I'll call it like what my husband's, even though we could get the FU house, based off of what we have, we're going to get this is a nice house
yeah.
and not go over the top. Because we don't know what the future holds, and we need her to understand that this is the responsible way to make decisions financially. And when you have other people who are dependent upon you, this is how you make these decisions.
Talk about long game, right? Talk about long game, right?
It's all about the long game. And it's like, as an entrepreneur, she's also had to deal with seeing my early struggles where, frankly, I made some really dumb decisions in the beginning, like I did not talk about all my finances as much as I should have. I didn't, I didn't charge the way that I should. My contracts were not set up the way that they should have been in the beginning. And so I've learned over time the things that end up working and the things that don't. And, it's like, I'm still learning, but I look back and I think, yeah, I mean, if I would have been more hard hitting on, blogging regularly, I always see my traffic, it grows immensely. My audience grows immensely whenever I blog on a consistent basis. I should do it. I like writing, but I hate how long it takes. And I also hate writing at the same time. And so it's like, I know I should do it, but there were other things that were going on in the meantime. And so I'm okay with that. I made the decisions that I did. What I'm doing now is I'm committing to my commitments. I'm committing to following through with the things that I say I'm going to do. And I'm also not shying away from collaboration. And so I guess if the final thing about where, if you were to say, okay, KiKi, what are you thinking about 2021 as we wrap up, this crazy year that we've had? What do you think about 2021 moving forward? I would say, I've done a lot of collaboration. We've talked about event profs. We've talked about building community, but ironically, one of my weaknesses has been in trusting in ongoing collaborations with people. And a lot of times I have actually pulled back when I thought things might get too complicated, or when I disagreed with exactly how
Yeah.
everything was laid out.
I was gonna say that, that's been a big learning point, and I think a lot of people go through that as an entrepreneur, when to say no,
Right.
how to say no, because everybody wants to say yes to everything. I'm sure,
Right.
A lot of people are contacting you. You got a big following. What's the right thing to say yes to? What's the right thing to say no to? And also, right, because this is something that we learn, I think, as entrepreneurs, how to say no in a way that leaves the door open for future possibility, because it's
Yes.
no right now.
Yes, yes. And that's so important, Cameron. That's so important because in the past, I've said no to things and shut down collaborations because I disagreed with the setup. I didn't like the way that things were being presented to me. But what a short-sighted way to deal with it, because if I would have given it just a little bit more time and given just a little bit more explanation, if I come back and say, it's a no for me, sorry, this isn't my cup of tea, I'm moving on. It has a very different outcome than me coming back and saying, you know what, I would love to work with you, but this, and this is not set up for, in a way that I want it to be. And here's why. What if we did this, and this? And that opens things up to a whole new world. And what I've been doing this past year is I've been testing that because I feel very uncomfortable with confrontation. So I avoid it, whenever I can, or try to make sure that if I know that something's not going to go in that direction, sometimes I just completely avoid, going down that path because I know we're going to disagree on something.
Well, that thing, I mean, you mentioned Tahira. So, she's
Yeah.
the big improv expert, has a whole bunch of letters after her name. So she's a really smart cookie.
She is.
But the idea of yes and, right?
Yes,
The idea
and.
of, I'm going to, no matter what, and I think this is a really good idea for folks that are building communities and associations. I had just somebody the other day, because I'm taking over the presidency of my local Master Networks chapter. And so somebody was saying something along the lines of, okay, now you're going to get all the complaints for stuff. And I got to say something that's sort of, call it maturity, call it lessons learned, call it whatever, call it leadership, whatever you want to call it. But now I'm like, who are these people that you're talking? I mean, everybody that I know, even frankly, the people that maybe 5 years ago, 10 years, I would just completely, classify as bastards and not want to have anything to do with. I'm like, everybody brings value to the table. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every single person brings value to the table, even if they're a horrible, despicable person, which, I'm not a fan of Trump, but I think you got to admire some of the things that he does well. I mean, in terms of how he's able to get people fired up. I mean, social media is a beast and we can complain about it. And I think one of the things that you have to understand about social media is that, the posts that get attention aren't the well-meaning, dialogue-y, I want to, make you feel good posts. They're the posts that get you fired up. So that's why
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, like, I just did my annual survey for Association Chat, and it's still floating out there. But of course, I'm curious, and I'm checking in to see how people are responding to everything. And it's like you have to. It's helpful to get the feedback. There are themes that arise, but one thing you find out is that no matter what you do, I mean, if you're not rattling someone's cage, you're probably not doing it right, because frankly, it means that you're milquetoast. It means that you're so careful about not shaking anything up that, that you're irrelevant. You're too safe because you're not pushing things. I'm not saying to be provocative for provocative's sake. I'm just saying to be a straight shooter. I mean, I think that, and maybe that's a poor choice of words, but I'm saying, people need to be communicated with clearly. And it's just sometimes our messages can get so watered down that they lose all value and meaning. And so one of the things that I saw in my survey response, which I thought was a sign of a good thing.
Yeah, talk to us about this survey, because I think this is really interesting, and I know I don't know about it, so I'm assuming a lot of the viewers that view this video later won't know about it. So talk to us about the survey for Association Chat, why you do it, and then get into some of the results here.
So the survey that I do is really just to see how people are responding to it, how connected with each other that they're feeling, how well they feel like they're being served, if they would recommend it to someone else. And then, it's asking about, growing points. So a lot of it's on a Likert scale, which is like from, least satisfied to most satisfied, 1 to 10 type of thing. And then,
I love that you're breaking that down, because the Likert scale, like that kind of thing, in terms of the surveys that you see, whether you see something that has a 0 or a 1 to 5 or least likely to most likely, there's a whole strategy behind your surveys.
There's a whole strategy behind it. And then toward the end, then it's asking for a couple of text-based responses. So those are always intriguing, right? What are you going to get? And it's fascinating because I had very completely opposed, like on completely opposite sides, advice from 2 different individuals. And one person wrote that a turnoff were the overtly political posts that were on the chat. Right. And that was a thing, but they had learned to read past them. And the other person said, there's a complete lack of any kind of political posts on the chat. And they really feel like the association community needs to be more involved and socially engaged. I thought that's awesome, because the truth is probably somewhere in between. If I have people complaining on completely opposite sides of the spectrum there, then the truth is probably in between. And the fact that no one else brought it up also, points in that direction. But I thought, I'm interested in looking at that feedback, because there are always going to be outliers, but themes and trends emerge. One thing that I saw from just poking around early, it's still got a couple more weeks to run, but one thing that I saw is that while like practically everyone would recommend the group to another friend, friend or another person. What I found was that not everybody felt like they had made connections. That was more like in the 70% range last time I looked, which to me isn't good enough, and then it like looked
and that's the reason that you're doing a survey in the first place, right?
Yes.
So, because how would you know if you didn't ask?
Exactly. I might think that everything's fine. There were also a couple of responses that there are cliques that are kind of growing in the community. So these are things that tell me, what I need to do is I need to be able to get more people, more community members, faces and names recognized, and I need to help people feel seen and heard. So what's rocking and rolling around in my brain right now is, what are the ways that I can do that? One of the things is, instead of just doing the interviews and stuff like that, I need to do more group chats where people are coming together and they're talking. They're the ones that are getting to connect with each other. And then the other thing that I was thinking,
I want to just throw this out there, because it's too perfect a setup and a great way for me to sort of advertise what I'm doing. But I want you to come and check out Biz Dev Live Networking on Tuesdays. We got the last one of the year on the 22nd, and then the first one of the new year will be on the 5th. But I think that I've found a little bit of electricity and magic there. So I think you might want to come and check that out. And then
count me in.
Please feel free to steal the format. I've added and put things into it, but I stole the format from somebody else, and I think that's something that I think I haven't read the book, but I know the concept. Some of the concepts is like the "please steal this book" kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
like this is stuff that
do it.
Just putting it out
Make
there
the world better. Yeah. I humbly accept your invitation and definitely want to check it out for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So talk to us about how folks can get, because I mean, obviously you care about your community. You're doing all these things to support folks, and I love that passion. So how can folks get in touch with you? I know I have your LinkedIn address down in the YouTube section down below and off to the side over on Facebook. But tell people how they can get in touch with you, and who are people that you are looking to connect with right now in this moment moving into 2021, which, you know, I definitely heard you as we were talking about 2021. I think 2021 is going to be amazing. The vaccine is on the way. History is repeating itself in the sense that I think we're going to have some roaring 20s ahead of us. I hope that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself in a Great Depression, but I think that we would be naive not to think in terms of the long game here and make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success. So I think that message is so important. So save your pennies, save your nickels, save your dimes as we get into some good times here, because I don't know how long it's going to last. I think things are going to get great, and they're going to get great for a lot of people, and they will be amazing for everybody that's preparing for, if we get a little Game of Thrones, we're getting into the good times, I think. And I think that also, unfortunately, winter will yet come again at some point down the road.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing, it changes the constant, right, in life. And so sometimes you have good times, sometimes you have bad. But if people want to reach out to me and connect, I am always, always open to connecting with people. At KiKi L'Italienne on Twitter and on Instagram is the way to reach me. I am exploring TikTok, where I'm not yet creating a ton of TikToks, but I'm observing, I'm lurking, and I'm following things like PB Here, which is an ARG that's just fascinating to watch as far as content goes. And then if you want to follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn, obviously that's the way to go. Associationchat.com is where you can find out more about where to watch Association Chat, how to become a member of the community. If you want to submit articles for Association Chat, you can do that. It's a really great website, blog, has a lot of great articles. And I encourage everyone to reach out to me there. And also through Techer International, I'm doing some really exciting new things with them. That we have a brand new offering that is you would love this, Cameron. It's experiential. It is asynchronous and synchronous in the way that we're leading people through engaging with each other to solve problems, right? And so there's a pre-registration that is happening right now for that. I am posting about that on associationchat.com. So it's not up there yet. And the pre-registration just got released on Tuesday. So I'll post something about that there. If you go to techer.com, you can read more about it too. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting with everyone. Yeah, I think like you, I have a lot of positive feelings about what is coming for us in 2021. I think that we are set up for a renaissance of sorts. And I think that while we might go through yet a few more, some bleak times, and it might be hard for some people, I think that we are going to get to a place that was unimaginable if we hadn't gone through what we've just gone through with 2020. If you think about it, did you ever imagine when we started out this year, did you ever imagine that you could get the entire world to sit through the same demo of software to try to solve something at the same time? We just went through a massive training as a society where everyone knows what Zoom is. What does that mean? What does that mean? If you think about the way that things like the telephone or a cell phone, like if you think about the way that this technology has transformed our lives, think about the fact that we just had a massive planetary experience and everyone figuring out how to communicate by video and what that means. So anyway, I think that this coming year will be really exciting as we see the results of that begin to appear.
I absolutely agree. All right. So tell everybody one more time. I know I've been flashing on the screen, but
Yeah.
where can everybody reach out to you and who should be reaching out to you?
Oh, and who should be reaching out to me? Okay, so I love thought leaders to interview for association chat, people who have something important to tell on how to improve lives, improve business processes, improve training. For associations, if you think about an association, there's an association for everything. I've had all kinds of speakers and authors on because associations also need to bring in thought leaders for their members. So if you're a speaker and you regularly get hired by associations to come and speak as their keynote, Association Chat might be the right place for you too. I'm also offering, this is something brand new that's starting up in 2021, where there's a whole line of educational offerings that's going to be launched in the new year. And I have it as text-based courses and also as webinar-based courses. And so if you have a subject, if you're a subject matter expert and you are someone who has something that you are able to train people in where they can, be stronger, better, faster, like all the different stuff, then contact me. May or may not be a fit. But if you check out associationchat.com, I think you'll get a feel for the right thing. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to give people a better way to do the work that they do. We're trying to give people a better way to be the people that they are. And we're also trying to give people a better way to experience life. So there's a lot there, but I think that there's something, if not for everyone, there's something that the people who are viewing this particular channel would be able to take away from that.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. KiKi, say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz